Welcome back to Notes for Engineers. I'm Alistair Cook, and this is the second episode where I have Stephen Kang with me. Stephen, quick intro.
Good day guys, this is Stephen Kang, working as a VMware administrator in a complex environment, I should say.
Great, and Stephen joined me in a previous episode where we looked at the Metro storage cluster and basically what it is and how it fits together. Today we're going to have a little deeper look and particularly compare Metro Storage Cluster to Site Recovery Manager, because often, probably not in the minds of the technology people, but in the managers, there's a feeling that they're the same thing. And then, of course, we want to mine Stephen for his experience of actually building Metro Storage Cluster so that we don't have to repeat the mistakes that he made, or at least that we can avoid some of the pain. So, Metro Storage Cluster versus SRM, they're both storage at 2 sites, ESX servers at 2 sites, and they both provide failover of virtual machines. Surely they're the same thing.
Yes. From the high level view, yes.
In the same way that a Ferrari is the same as a Fiat. They both have 4 wheels and seats.
Yes.
I've got to love the way that sometimes the evaluations are very carefully set up for a series of tick marks on irrelevant points. So I guess we should really highlight the aims and the differences between the aims of the two products.
Yeah. So Metro Storage Cluster went through that on the last episode that it's just a normal cluster, but the ESXi servers are in different, physically in different locations, so that when there is a disaster in data center A, it moves fails over to data center B.
And that it happens with no manual intervention.
Yes.
And it's all one vSphere cluster managed by one vCenter server.
Yeah, that's right. So everything's automatic, and that's the key point, which is the difference between SRM. Because SRM, Site Recovery Manager, to give you an overview, I'll draw the same thing maybe.
Yeah, we have, if you refer back to the previous video, we have the diagram, very similar diagram in the end.
Yes.
But quite a different functionality on it.
Yeah.
So we have 2 data centers physically separated.
But this time, these are
the 2 separate clusters. And separate vCenter
servers. Yeah. So that migration between them is not possible. Just like, the vMotion is not possible.
vMotion between data centers is not currently a functionality we have.
Not yet. So how SRM works is, let's say there is a VM here, and it's using storage here, and I only have experience with vMSC, so I'll probably talk about that. So it uses a Metro mirror function, which is a replication, and synchronous. So whatever is written here will be right there, will be written there.
And this is a LUN-level replication. The LUN at site A is replicated to site B.
Yeah,
so SVC is synchronous only. Plenty of other storage technologies are asynchronous or stack-based.
It supports asynchronous.
Okay. You, of course, because your 2 data centers are close enough together to do so.
Yeah, that's right. But in this case, we use the synchronous because it's close enough. Yeah. So basically, this is what it is. And
in normal operation, this replica copy, the read-only copy, isn't actually presented up to the ESX servers at the recovery site.
Yeah.
They see no storage. They can't see the virtual machine here, which, if you remember, in the Metro storage cluster, the VM that was active at site A was also visible in site B. In normal operation, that's not the case for SRM.
Sans.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not possible. So, yeah. So this LUN is also connected here. Read-only is also connected here.
Although it's only actually presented up at failover time.
Yeah. So SRM unmounts the read-only volume, so people don't use it. Okay. So, and another thing is, it needs a thing called flash copy for each.
Now this specifically is an IBM functionality.
So
And that's one of the things you will see with different storage arrays is to enable all of the functionality any site recovery manager, you may need additional licensing in your storage array.
And this flash copy is also mapped here. And mapped here. So let's see. Yeah. So as you see, if you want to implement SRM using vMSC, you'll need 4 volumes in the end.
4 volumes to protect one.
Exactly. This is but there are 2 configurations available. This is pre-configured environment.
Sure.
So you you get all these flash copies ready in place, then it works. But if you go for non-configured environment, you can dedicate a MDisk group so that it uses that specific MDisk group and creates flash copy.
Right.
On the fly.
We'll do that for you within the automation pieces.
That's right.
So again, that's variable dependent on the storage array you're using for the replication. We should also say this is all array-based replication because we're comparing it to Metro Storage Cluster, which is array-based.
Yeah. So these 2 flash copies are just dummy. So they're
used for failover tests and failback
only
tests.
testing. Yeah. So these are only used for testing. So if you want to test failover this VM to here, SRM uses this flash copy to map it to either VSX.
So it's not like we've got 4 copies of the data. We've only got 2 copies of data plus some space for changes.
Yeah, that's right. So, but in the end, if you're using thick provisioning, it's times 4. So it's quite expensive in the end. So the difference between SRM and Metro storage clusters, this requires outage if you want to do a planned migration or
Right, so if I've got a virtual machine or group of virtual machines, and in fact, because I'm going to fail over the whole line, I need to move them to site B as a planned activity, then all of the VMs are going to be shut down. Final replication and storage stand up of VMs at this end. That could take quite a while.
Yeah, but the good thing about SRM is it knows the application dependency. Well, you have to configure it on the...
You tell it the recovery plan.
But at least you can do it.
Yes. Unlike Metro Storage Cluster, which just has those priorities for virtual machines, and it's just filling a queue.
Exactly. So, to recap last episode's example, let's say there is a database and an application VM here. Then what you can do on SRM is bring database up first, wait for the VMware tools to come back, and then turn on the application server. So it knows which one to power on, which one to wait for.
Knows the order, and you could also put a script into the startup of the database server that would actually do a check to see that the database was ready and not release until the database was ready.
And the thing is, I forgot to mention in last episode that for Metro Storage Cluster, stretched VLAN isn't required.
I remembered that just after we hit the stop button. Metro Storage Cluster, because you're vMotioning the VM across, its IP address and its therefore its VLAN has to be across both sites.
Yes, and it'll be using the same port group. So
distributed switch across the 2 sites is really nice.
Yeah, but with SRM, on the fly, you can customize the IP.
Yeah, so you can say it has this IP address at site B and this IP address at site A, and it changes the IP address as it moves, and can change the port groups as well, because of course these are 2 different vCenter servers, so they're different port groups, and you can map port groups at site A,
folders, everything.
All of those nice things.
Yeah, so you can compare it that way. So SRM is more, should I say, knows more about application, should I say?
But it's going to move, my feel on it was also that it's about moving VMs much less often. That Metro Storage Cluster is going to allow you to move virtual machines as a routine activity, whereas this is going to be much more of an intrusive and occasional thing. So your VMs will normally live at A. But if there's a big problem, they might move to B, whereas Metro Storage Cluster, you can move VMs back and forth as you wish.
And there comes the automation. So for Metro Storage Cluster, data center goes down, HA kicks in, migrates to VM automatically. But for SRM, you need to go into SRM Manager and
press the big red button.
Yeah.
And that the original philosophy of SRM was you're going to have some executive of the company say, yes, you can press the big red button. It wasn't going to be an engineer who says, "Oh shit, something's gone wrong. I'm going to migrate everything." It's going to be an executive decision. I suspect that's changing a little as the focus of SRM changes.
Yeah, because with recent Power Theory release, they now support SRM SDK
automation through scripting.
Yeah, so that's one thing you can think about if you really want automation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the
hopefully that helps when your manager is telling you to deploy a Metro storage cluster when really what you need is Site Recovery Manager. The other thing for Site Recovery Manager that's a big difference to Metro storage cluster is the range. Because we can use asynchronous replication, Site B could be 500 or 1,000 miles away from Site A, whereas Metro storage cluster we're down to around 100 miles for the separation. And if we're doing snapshot-based replication, then even the data volumes that are being transferred can be much less as well.
Okay, so hopefully this was helpful.
Yeah.
And let's finish it by
more stories on Metro storage cluster.
Yeah.
So first off, Stephen has some blog posts that go into more detail than we have time to look at here. Tell the people at home where to find those stories on your blog.
You can find it on ssbking.com.
You've documented, it's the best kind of blog post is, I had this pain and I fixed it in this way. I love those blog posts, and that's what I really like about what Stephen's been writing. So what has been the experience for you with deploying?
The first problem was if you decide to use a new storage technology you are not really familiar with, so that's one thing you need to get trained and
well, because of course when you're talking about SRM it was using IBM term, but when we're talking about Metro storage cluster it was the new 3-part equipment that you've got deployed. So there'll be a whole different way of approaching it.
And one big thing I can think of is you need to do a lot of testing. So to give you an example based on my experience, there were fixed amount of testing the vendors did, but apart from that, one of our colleague, he came up with another testing plan, and doing that, everything died.
You exposed some holes.
So
let's tear off the post-it note.
I'll quickly draw it. So,
and this is one of the things is that where you're working with a vendor-based testing procedure, they're testing what they're responsible for. You are always responsible for more than what one of your vendors is responsible for. So your testing pretty much always has to extend beyond what the vendor wants to test.
When the project is done, this is your baby. So
you've got to live with this. This is one of the things I kind of focus on. The ops team looks after this. The in-house team looks after this for years. The project team, well, they're incented to be gone as fast as possible.
So yes. Okay, so
this diagram is explained in the other video we did.
Yeah. So what happened? The disaster scenario we thought about is what happens? The link between these two storages is broken, and only one witness server loses the connection to one storage.
Oh!
So it's highly unlikely to happen because this is SAN.
So this is fabric extension.
Yeah, but this is IP.
Right.
So it's highly unlikely to happen.
You wouldn't expect these two to fail and this to still be operational unless you had maybe a backhoe go through the one cable that goes out of your data center.
Yes, out of band probably.
We in New Zealand never have problems with only having one link coming out of the building to one ISP or one phone exchange.
Yep, so when this happens, this 3-part here doesn't know what to do because it cannot talk to this peer and also it cannot talk to a witness.
So it should say, as far as I know, the rest of the storage array is still up there, these other two pieces, and so I should treat myself. This is like an H-chain isolation. I'm still operational, but I can't verify that the rest of the cluster is there. And Under vSphere, we would say, well, it's not safe to continue to operate. How would that behave?
So theoretically, what should happen is free-part becomes, it stops all I/O, which is definitely true, because otherwise it'll cause a lot of
Otherwise this side is going to say, well, I've got a witness, I've got myself, therefore I have a quorum and I'm going to present all the storage up here.
Yeah.
So this side should not present anything that's actually part of the replicator.
Yeah. So it should stop everything, basically. But the interesting thing was, when this stops I/O, it should send PDL SCSI sense codes.
So this is the permanent device loss.
Yes.
You cannot get this LUN here no more.
Otherwise, because the link is still available, right? The path is still there. So if ESX thinks there is still LUN available, it'll keep
Sending
looking for it. Yeah, exactly. It'll keep saying, "Hey, where are you?"
Until that should only happen until the first I/O times out, which should be sort of 60 seconds.
But it didn't happen. That's why we say you need to come up with more testing plan, because you might face some issues on storage vendor.
What you logically expect isn't necessarily what's actually going to happen.
So if this storage doesn't send PDL sense code here, then ESX doesn't know what to do, because the path is available.
Because these are the optimized paths. Over this way is the non-optimized path, and it says I'm not going to send I/O that way, so we don't trombone.
Yeah. So that's where the problem occurred. ESXi's were in hang state.
So this would have been very similar to an all path down hang state that we've seen historically, and that repeatedly has been fixed.
But yeah, that was the problem, and the only way to fix was reboot all ESXi servers.
Right.
So let's say you haven't tested this before and you face this.
The backcutter goes through these cables. And you've got 200 production virtual machines on here.
Maybe 1,000. Then you'll be in a big trouble, because you don't exactly know what to do.
Yeah, so that's not going to be a happy place as you're escalating to the vendor, and particularly here in New Zealand, where we're a fairly small country, and so the highly technical people aren't necessarily in country, and our time zone can be a challenge too.
Yeah, so that's one.
Be glad to have found that in testing, and very, very thankful. I know some of Stephen's colleagues are very thorough and frustratingly thorough, but when this sort of stuff turns up, you can see the benefit for that thoroughness.
Because, well, in the end, this was by design, so it just stops I/O, do not. So,
but really, we want a firmware change in here, so it'll send that.
Maybe in future they might support, but right now we have to stick to this behavior.
Yeah.
So,
but over at this side, what would HA have done at this point?
Yeah, nothing happened there.
Yeah, so this side says, well, there's still the VMs are all still running. There's no loss of virtual machines.
So any VMs here were normal. Because it still has access to witness.
So it's still satisfying my own.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about if there had been production VMs here that were running, this side just didn't. HA, the storage would have promoted the LUN up here, but HA wouldn't have kicked in to bring the VMs across.
Yeah, so that was another problem. So when you configure Metro Storage Cluster on cluster level, what you do is let HA to detect whatever volumes in PDL state, which is disabled by default. So once you enable it, then ESX, and when ESX receives PDL, then the volume is permanently available. So I'll just bring it across here.
And there was good information on that on Yellow Bricks, wasn't there, Duncan Epping's blog?
Yeah. And clustering deep dive.
Of course. Everybody's got the clustering deep dive. If you haven't, then have a look on Amazon for the vSphere clustering technical deep dive by Duncan Epping and Frank Denneman.
It's the best book.
It is the Bible for this.
Yeah. So that's an interesting behavior I found during the project. So testing is the primary key to success. Everything else was fine, I think, because Metro Storage Cluster just produces more work for you, because you have to set BRS affinity rule to this VM should be in this ESX group, these VMs should be in this.
Based on the native location of the ones they reside on.
Yeah, so
it would be nice if that was provided upwards into vSphere, that because you're placed on a LUN that lives here, but that's the sort of thing that will come over time if people are deploying a lot of this.
Yeah, that would be a great feature.
And this is in production for you now? You've got VM sitting on Metro's cluster?
We have about 1,500, I think.
Right, that's a reasonable sized environment. You can see why Stephen's environment is reasonably complex. And had no operational issues because it's been a month or so that you've had this?
Not until now. It's going well.
No issues yet.
Yeah.
Touch wood. Excellent. Well, this has been another episode of Notes for Engineers with Stephen Kang. You can find him at SSBKang, and you can find Notes for Engineers at notesforengineers.com.